All right, good morning and welcome to the CFI Playoff Bracket Show. And I'm the Pep Man, Matt Morrow. And we typically don't do shows on Sunday morning, so I don't know how many people are going to watch, but we're going to go ahead and knock it out. First of all, congratulations to all the teams that made the playoffs this year. I think we have a really, really exciting field of playoff teams, and we've got some great matchups that we're going to break down this morning. So we're going to start with the 4A West because that's where most of the Charlotte area teams are, but we'll go through the other brackets as well. Grimsley, Davie County, it's not, either one of our area teams up, in that matchup, but taking a look at it real quick, Grimsley is 10-0 on the season, Davie 4-6. Davie's given up 316 points on the year. Grimsley's only given up 144 while scoring 445. Davie can score. They've scored 291 points on the season. Grimsley, they've beaten everyone in their path. Looks like their closest game was a 5-point win over Greensboro Page. Davie County, I would say probably their best win is record wise. Looks like it's maybe North Davidson. They beat them 28-21 back earlier in the season. Most recently, they did beat Glenn 36-22. And we know Glenn has played some pretty good teams, on their schedule as well. So, but you look at it, you got to feel like Grimsley's the big time favorite here. There's a lot of talent on that team, and known as one of the best teams, if not the best team, out of Greensboro this year. So, I think we got Grimsley moving on in that matchup. Now, looking at a very interesting game here. The winner of Grimsley Davie will play the winner of Reagan and Charlotte Catholic. And when I saw this matchup come across, I was very excited. If you like offensive football, this game has the potential to be a big time shootout. Um, if you don't know much about Reagan, we're going to talk about them here shortly. But Charlotte Catholic, we know them very well, obviously. They were part of a three-way tie in the Southwestern Conference, and we saw that Independence got the higher seed based on the RPI when they, did the final calculation. So Catholic, it looks like ended up getting the number 3 position out of that, having the lowest RPI of those 3 teams, which is why they're on the road going to Reagan. But when you look at Reagan, Reagan is very good. They only lost by 6 to Grimsley earlier this year, and you see Grimsley's the number 1 seed. East Forsyth beat them pretty good, 38-3. But outside of that, these guys can score. They shut out Mount Tabor, which is a pretty strong performance there. Mount Tabor is a pretty good team as well. But they put up the likes of 31. They scored 34 in that loss to Grimsley. They played Myers Park this year. They beat Myers Park by 3. And we know Myers Park, is not a playoff team this year, so that's a little bit of an indication on how they would perform against a Charlotte team, possibly. They only beat Glenn by 2. They beat Davie, we just talked about, by 20. They beat West Forsyth by 3. So some closer games there against teams that are not playoff teams, but at 8-2, they are an offensive football team. They scored 294 points this year. They can run the ball, pretty well. I know defensively, they have a guy that really stands out in the pass rush game, Samaj Turner, who's got 10.5 sacks on the season. He also has 38 quarterback hurries. That's pretty dang on good. So that'll be a guy you have to account for. They have a running back in Sion Saunders. He was a Pep Man player earlier this season. I think he runs the ball pretty well. Pretty good athlete from that position. So they have some guys, that you're going to have to account for. quarterback. I know Purvis was a guy that I've covered before. It looks like he hadn't played as much this year. I don't know if he got hurt or something, but I know he's a talented player. So the big thing in this is which Reagan team's going to show up, because we've seen them, play some teams really good like Grimsley, and then they struggled to beat Myers Park, like I said earlier. So which team's going to show up? The atmosphere at Reagan will be interesting. It's a newer school, so I don't know how many fans they're going to have. But for Charlotte Catholic, they have been through the wars. They've been in some really, really tight games this year. Most notably, I think about the Hickory Ridge game. I think about the Independence game, and then the Butler game. Against really good teams, they've been in those tight situations, so they know, how to win and pull through and battle, through tough circumstances. I really like, Charlotte Catholic to win this game, to be honest with you, and move on and play Grimsley, which would be a heck of a matchup in the second round up at Grimsley. And, I would favor Catholic in that hypothetical matchup, to be honest with you. We've seen Grimsley play some Charlotte Metro teams. You think about Porter Ridge. I think that was last year. They went up there and knocked them off. We saw Butler play them a couple years ago up at Grimsley. And they had them, on the ropes. Then Grimsley was able to pull it out. But, anyone from Charlotte going up against them, I don't think, number one, they're not going to be scared, for sure. And then I think they match up very well, in that quadrant right there. All right, we got comments. Good. I did not expect to see comments this morning. But I should have known the chat administrator would be here. He's always here. Good morning. Good morning, Kyle. Yeah, Money saying winner of Reagan Catholic will knock off Grimsley. Reagan should have beaten them. Yeah. Okay. Good information on that. Thank you. And he's saying Independence and Catholic in the third round. Well, let's take a look at that Independence matchup. They're playing Greensboro Page. Independence, like I said, we had the three-way tie in the Southwestern, and Independence got that high seed because of the higher RPI. Independence coming off the big win over Butler, 27-21 in their King of the Hill rival game, which was a great game. When I talked to people that were there, really, really good performance running the football. I had one of the Independence guys send me some stats, and I don't remember offhand, but I know that running back had a really strong game in that one. We talk a lot about, their quarterback, Justin Little, who's a super sophomore quarterback and had a great season, really in his first year starting on varsity. But that's the thing about Independence. They are a balanced football team. And to really be a successful football team in this point of the year, you got to be able to run and pass when you need to, especially. Like we said, Independence is 9-1. Their only loss was that Catholic game earlier this year, where they lost it, literally at like the last second there. Otherwise, they've played very well all year long, defeating teams in an impressive fashion consistently. You take a look at Greensboro Page. Page is 5-5 on the year. They went 4-3 in their conference. Take a look at their schedule. Recently, their most impressive game might be that 5-point loss to Grimsley. That showed that they could be competitive against a good football team. So I think number one for Independence, you can't be complacent here and look at this team and say, okay, they're 5-5. They're not that great. They've only scored 188 points this year, giving up 213. You look at the numbers this time of year, it's very dangerous because, the playoffs are a whole new season. You're 0-0, and you've got to take everyone, you know, for what they can do and respect your opponent, which I don't think is going to be a problem here for Independence. They've been working so hard to get back to this point as a program that I don't see them coming out and laying an egg, in the first round for sure. Page does have some good sized kids, which always gives you a chance. I like this. I like the size of a couple of these kids, especially big nose guard, 285. They got a big offensive line, 300 pounds, 280 pounds, 6'4". I don't think size is going to be a problem. I think for Independence, their scheme offensively is hard to prepare for in a week. I really love what they do on that side of the football. They've got good leadership. I think they're prepared to make a run here. I think this bracket sets up a possible rematch with Charlotte Catholic in the third round, like someone was saying earlier, which none of us would be against. That's for sure. So the winner of Independence and Page will take on the winner of an interesting first round game between Olympic and TC Roberson. Olympic gets a home playoff game. They won the SOMEC conference going 10-0, the first undefeated season in school history. Shout out to the Trojans for getting that feat. Coming into the season, we talked about, Palisades High School opening a new school down in the Olympic area, how it was going to take away from them. And, people were saying, they weren't going to be that good. But, I said from the start, they have really good top-end talent at that school. That top-end talent has played well this year. And now you see, the fruits of those labors paying off. So, you talk about Olympic. Elijah Holmes at quarterback has had a really great senior season. The two sophomore running backs, I think, are really, really good. I was really impressed with them in their win over Audrey Kill. They both ran well, especially Walker, number 24. I really, really love, his game. They have a good offensive line. Sterling Green at receiver is a good player. Hall, the tight end who got offered by Virginia Tech, is a really, really good player. They run a spread kind of RPO type of system. Holmes does a great job in his reads. I think that's a big reason why they do well in their offense. Defensive line is very strong. Elite Nairn, committed to Liberty, is a good player. Manuel Cordray is an all-conference defensive end from last season. They have another guy in Jalen Davis who does a good job on that defensive line, and the defensive line kind of makes that thing go. Sophomore linebacker Tosi is a really good player, and they have some other guys that really play well within their roles. They are a true team that really does well. All the parts fit together well, and that's why they are at the point they're at right now with a 9 seed hosting TC Roberson out of Asheville. Now, TC Roberson is 6-4 on the year. They went 4-2 in their conference. You take a look at their schedule. They did defeat Ashbrook 12-0, so that's a little indicator of how they, face against a Charlotte area team out of Gastonia. They're not playing their best football right now. They got shut out by AC Reynolds 28-0 2 weeks ago. And then they lost to Franklin 28-7 last week. So they've lost 2 in a row coming into this matchup. But if you look at them, we always used to talk about mountain teams and how mountain teams are typically run first teams and all that kind of stuff we used to say back in the day. That's not necessarily as true anymore. For the stats that they do have in here, they do show a little bit of balance here. So I wouldn't expect to see your typical type of, old school mountain offense from these guys. You take a look at their roster. I always like to see if they got some big guys there. Olympic is pretty big on the offensive line and defensive line for that matter. They've got a couple guys, and Jesus Rodriguez, 6'3", 286, plays both ways. Joshua Inman, 6'1", 275. They got a couple big guys, but I think Olympic has the size advantage on the lines of scrimmage. So, I like Olympic to win here. Like one of the things I said last year about these guys, they were the best team that didn't make the playoffs last year. And I think that kind of spurred them to having this great season that they had this year. I feel like, that kind of stuff, really means something. And now they've got that opportunity. They're hosting a first round game. I like them to move on and play Independence in a very, very fun second round game. I would be excited to see that for both of those schools, for sure. Okay. Yeah, I literally just said that. Yep. Yeah, I would love to see it. I think that would be great for both of those schools, and it would be great for Charlotte because the past few years, these are not two schools you think about when you talk about, typical Charlotte higher end echelon, football programs. They're typically on that second tier the past few years. You think about Huff, Mallard Creek, Chambers, those guys when you think about, the higher end first tier team. So that would be awesome. And I think we're gonna get it. I think we're gonna get it in the second round. And that's great. That's great. Okay. Talking about Charlotte matchups, we got another Charlotte matchup here in the first round. We got Huff, 5 seed, winning the Queen City because of the RPI ranking. And they are hosting a 28 seed in Providence. And of course, you think about Providence, you're thinking about their big offensive line, number one, and you're thinking about Luke Bailey, the running back who's put up a ton of yards all year long. So Chat Administrator says he's got Huff on upset alert. Well, I'll tell you this: the big key here, if Providence is going to pull a major upset, the key is going to be, can the young quarterback Jackson Debe grow up really fast and provide enough balance to throw the football for the Panthers? Because Huff playing a one-dimensional team, I've seen their defense up close. Their defense is real. They are fast. They are well coached. And it's going to take a heck of an effort for them, to get upset in the first round. Now, the good thing for Providence is they've won their last 3 games in convincing fashion. Now, they didn't play, the greatest competition. They beat Rocky River, Garinger, and East Meck, but that's not their fault. That's their conference, Before that, they gave Independence a pretty good run. They lost 28-13, and then they lost to Mooresville in a close game, 40-28, where they had the lead in the fourth quarter. So they've played well in spots against good teams, recently. So, if you're Providence, that gives you a little bit of confidence coming in here. And anytime you have an offensive line like they have, you feel like you got a shot. But like I said, expect Huff to load up against the run. They've got the corners on the outside with Samari Matthews and Xavier McIntyre to play one-on-one and not worry about getting beat. So I'm going to expect to see Huff commit 8 guys in the box, and they're going to make that young quarterback make some plays. And it's not, if they get beat once, it's not going to stop them from continuing to do that. The problem for Providence is defensively, do they have enough to cause problems for Huff? Even in their victories, like we were at the Parkwood game when Luke Bailey set the record, for touchdowns in a game. Parkwood scored 42 points, and they had a lot of offensive success, in their losses, they give up a good amount of points here. So the key is two keys for Providence: offensive balance, being able to throw when they need to, and do they have enough defensively to slow Huff down? Now, that's a big ask. That's a big ask because Huff is really, really good. And you got to think about this. Huff has had so many playoff disappointments. You would think now, out of any time, they're going to be laser focused because it's Tad Hudson's senior year, it's JT Smith's senior year, it's Markel Quick's senior year. They've got guys that have been through the wars and have experienced that disappointment. And to predict them losing in the first round is something I cannot do. I just can't do it. I think they're going to be locked in. They've got really good seniors. They've got good leadership. They're coached really well. And they won the conference. So I think this is their time. This is their time, and I think they're going to be ready. And they may send a message in this first round matchup to say, don't forget about us because, it's time for us to make this happen. Okay. We got that matchup there. And the winner of that matchup is going to play the winner of the Charlotte Invitational. That's every year, man. Every year. Mallard Creek is hosting Ardrey Kell. And, I've seen some people say they feel like this is a really great first round matchup here because you look at the records and you say, these teams are really close to each other. But when you dig a little deeper into the matchup, and I'm going to start with Ardrey Kell here, they have won the games that they're supposed to win, definitely. Their two losses came to Weddington and obviously Olympic in that big game 2 weeks ago. I saw the Weddington game up close and personal, and I watched the stream of the Olympic game. And both of those games, I saw their offense never really got on track in either one of those games. They never got into a rhythm. It seems like Ardrey Kell needs to get into a rhythm offensively. And I know you're saying every team has to have that. Not necessarily. Some teams, can really rely on big plays and things like that. But Ardrey Kell is a rhythm football team. They don't have what I would call a game-breaking guy on the offensive side of football. They have to execute really well. Presutti on the outside is a really good receiver. Baylor Morgan's a really good running back. But they are not what I call game-breaking players. They have to be able to execute consistently, put drives together, first downs, and get it going that way. That's tough to do against Mallard Creek, especially defensively. They fly to the football on defense. They are very fast. They don't have huge D linemen in the middle of the defense per se, but they're quick. They're quick off the ball, and they fly. And I think that's a tough matchup for this Ardrey Kell team because Ardrey Kell's not huge up front, but they have good quick linemen that can get to the second level and things like that. So I think the matchup for them is really tough. It's really tough from that perspective. Now, you flip it over, Mallard Creek offensively, they run, I think a good system, but they've got to, get the quarterback settled. They played 3 quarterbacks against Chambers last week. I feel like, Trey Robinson, number 10, is probably going to be the guy that they go with. He played the most. But mixing in the sophomore, number 15, he's a really good runner. They run some good spread option, misdirection type stuff in their offense. That's where they had some success against Mallard Creek. And then throwing the football, Benjamin Black, number 11 on the outside, I was really impressed with him. When they were able to get the ball to him, he was able to make some plays. He can really run really well after the catch. We could throw the deep ball to him. He's their number one receiving target. But they got some other guys that can make some plays on the outside as well. The big key here, Audrey Kell cannot give up the big play to the Mallard Creek offense. If they can keep this game, in the teens from a scoring standpoint, that gives them the best chance to win. A higher scoring game, I think, is going to favor Mallard Creek just because of how good their defense is. Chambers did a real smart thing. They did not kick it to Darren Morrison, who's really dynamic in the special teams game. RG Kill, I think, will have to try to mimic that as well. You can't let him make plays in that area. He's too good. Don't even give him a chance to do it. But I like Mallard Creek here to move on past RG Kill and set up a typical Charlotte second round rematch with them and Huff, which that's going to be a heck of a football game for sure. All right, let's move our bracket down. We've got a couple of non-Charlotte matchups that we'll run through real quick. Asheville and Mount Tabor. I think that's a really interesting matchup. Mount Tabor is a team that I've liked all year long. I feel like, ever since they went out to Richmond early in the season and beat them really, really good, they kind of sent a message to everyone that, hey, we're a team that we need to that you need to reckon with. So let's take a look at Mount Tabor real quick. 8-2 on the year. They've had a good year. They've only lost to East Forsyth 31-13, and then that shutout loss to Reagan, where the poster earlier said they didn't have their quarterback. So they bounced back last week. They really walked the dog with Parkland 44-0. And then going to Asheville. Asheville is a good team as well. They're 8-2 as well. This is probably one of the best first round matchups of the season, or in this bracket, I should say. Asheville, they lost to Kings Mountain earlier in the year, 24-0, and they lost to AC Reynolds 34-7. But other than that, they had some impressive victories throughout the year. So I think this is going to be a great first round matchup here. And if you wanted to pick an upset by seeding, this is one I could see happening. Mount Tabor is a tough, well-coached football team. And, Asheville might be on a minor upset alert here. Minor. I wouldn't say it's a major. It's a 13-20, so. But both 8-2 teams, both have been battle-tested. The winner of that matchup would play the winner of East Forsyth and West Forsyth. And let me get my brackets messed up. There we go. And, of course, we've talked about East Forsyth all year long. We know they're a really strong football team. They've been impressive all year long. They got a lot of talent. They're well coached. They got good seniors. They got a really good defense, and they got offensive playmakers all over the place. 10-0 on the year. They have not lost the game. When you start looking at them, they just played this game and won 53-7. So those first round playoff rematches from the week before, we have seen these matchups before in the past. And it's tough to beat a good team twice. The problem here is West Forsyth being 4-6. Can they do anything to make up 46 points in a week? Most likely, no. I mean, just being real about it. Excuse me. When it's that big of a difference, Sometimes it is what it is. You can try, to do some things. There'll be some things I'm sure, they'll look at on film and, try to correct you know, but when it's that big of a difference, you got to favor East Forsyth to win that game and move forward on to the second round. So they would be playing that winner of Mount Tabor Asheville, and Mount Tabor getting a East Forsyth second round matchup. That'd be pretty cool to see. All right, we got Watauga and South Iredale, a 3:30 matchup. Watauga is a heavy run team. Now, they are a typical Mountain team. They have a big fullback who's a really good player. South Iredale going up to the Mountain. Shout out to South Iredale, man. I was talking about, and here he is right here. I was getting ready to bring him up. If you like rushing attacks, yep. Because South Iredale has a pretty good running back in Neal, who does a good job, in their offense. That game's going to be over pretty quickly. But, South Iredale defensively, how can they slow down Watauga? It's a tough bet on the Mountain, man. It's a tough bet. They do have South Iredale has a big play receiver in Vuk who's got good size. He's like 6'4". Had a couple big catches in their game against Cox Mill this past week. So if they're gonna have any shot of an upset, I think that guy's gonna have to make some plays on the outside. You're gonna have to get big plays because Wataugas will chew up the clock and run the ball. And one of the things we always used to say when we were going to the playoffs was, what does a team know, and then what do they not know? Watauga knows how to stop the run because they see it all the time. So you got to have some type of passing threat, in a game like this and get some big plays, and keep the pressure on them because the longer that game stays close, the better chance you're going to have of pulling it out. But best of luck to South Iredale. That's a good trip. Hopefully we don't get any snow. It's a little early for snow, so hopefully we won't get that. So the winner of Watauga South Iredale is going to face the winner of Northwest Guilford and Southeast Guilford. And let's take a look and see. My guess is these teams might have played each other already this year. But Northwest Guilford has a really strong passing attack. Quarterback Tanner Ballou is the one we've talked about all year long. He can really throw the football well. He's got 32 touchdown passes on the season. One of the better quarterbacks in the state, for sure. They had a big running back, Mike Gadet. Their coach sent me his stats. He had a big game. I think it was this past Friday. He'll be a Pep Man player coming up on the show this week. So they have an ability to run the football as well, which is really good because Ballou is really good at the quarterback spot. So taking a look at their schedule, they have played each other this year, and then Northwest Guilford defeated Southeast Guilford 37-10 when they played earlier this year. So just to see what we can learn from that game here. Northwest led 22-10 at halftime, and then they shut out Southeast in the second half. So in that game, Ballou was only 8-19 passing for 238, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Southeast, their quarterback, Bryson Serrano, only threw for 104 yards and had an interception. He was 8-23. Southeast, they did run for 117 yards and a touchdown. Looks like Williams had the big 86-yard run in that one. But the big story, we were just talking about him, Mike Gadet at running back. He had 319 yards rushing in that game. And a touchdown. Why did I know about that? We got to send that in, guys. But Yeah, that's pretty impressive. So obviously the big thing for Southeast Guilford, stopping the run. Which, if you load up against him, you saw Baloo did throw for 238 yards passing. So that's a tough mix there because when you're trying to load up against the run, you're going to give opportunities on the outside to make plays. And they made a couple of those plays. Trenton Cloud had a touchdown, 70 yards receiving. Bristol Carter had a touchdown as well, 102 yards receiving. So those rematches are tough. And Northwest Guilford is tough because they can run and pass very well. So you have to figure, like I just said with East Forsyth, West Forsyth, these rematches, when it's that big of a difference, you got to favor the team that won the first one. All right, couple of comments here. Let's see here. Mount Tabor versus Asheville will be a defensive game. If Tabor quarterback plays, they win. Good point there. Let's see. Northwest will get to the third round. If they were to play Watauga, that's an interesting matchup. I agree. I agree with you, Money. That's a good call there. Last time we played Southeast Guilford, they were triple attack option. Not sure if that's the case. Yeah, looking at the stats from that game when they played earlier this year, Serrano did run the ball 12 times, so that's possible. He didn't have a lot of yards, but he did run 12 times, so that leads to believe an option type of attack, for sure. Okay, let's take a look at the next matchup. Oh my gosh. Now, we've been talking about rematches. This is a rematch I am sure Weddington did not want. Yeah, Weddington, the 6th seed, played Marvin Ridge, the 27. Now, they literally just played this past Friday night. And these are the matchups that you don't want as a first round rematch because this game was really, really close. Weddington won 24-21. And when you're the, favorite and you win a game, like that against a rival that's emotional and you breathe a sigh of relief like, okay, God, I'm glad we won't see them again because they're getting it together. And then they get them again on the same field at home. Man, it's crazy to be talking about Weddington in an upset alert situation, but this is what we have here. That game, 24-21, Marvin Ridge scored all their points in the second half. And that makes it even more of a situation where Marvin Ridge is like, okay, we figured something out here. And if we would have had a little more time, we could have possibly pulled it off. So now you got a confident Marvin Ridge team coming in here, playing their best football of the year, and this is a tough one for Weddington. This is tough. Now you look at the numbers. Marvin Ridge has some numbers in for this game. Evan Metters, their star quarterback, he threw for 146 yards and 2 touchdowns. No turnovers. That's a big key there. He also ran, for 46 yards, was their leading rusher. So obviously, for them to win, Metters is going to have to play, his best game of the year. They got a really good receiver in Mark Arthur, who caught 107 yards receiving. And then defensively, they had a couple guys with double-digit tackles. Cole Seawright, who I've talked about before. LaPena and Schumacher, as well as Nate Rawls. And then they have a really good defensive lineman in Amani Chawama, who had a sack. He's a really good player. I've seen his film. Jackson Moore is a really good kicker. They said he had a 50-yard field goal at the end of the game to try to put it in overtime, and he missed it. But 50 yards, man, that's That's tough for NFL players. He's a great kicker. I've seen him, throughout his career. So it's a really, really tough deal for Weddington here. They did win the game, but oh man, that's a tough draw. Um, the good thing is Griffin Reimer, who's their star tight end, he was hurt. Believe he's back now. Zymil Patterson's a heck of a playmaker on both sides of the ball. Um, and then their quarterback, Tyler Budge, is a really, really good 2024 junior quarterback. Sam Neely at corner is a really good player. They have good players. But, conference rematches in the first round that are close are tough, man. They are really, really tough. Chat administrator saying he's calling the upset. Ooh, they're not going to like you in Weddington. They're not going to like you down there. Yeah. Because, the point of this is now there's less games, because some teams are not, obviously in the playoffs. So they're going to go to these other games. So it's going to just drive the atmosphere up even more. And if you've been to Weddington, they got a lot of parking, but sometimes it's a bit of a hike. So get there early. There's going to be a lot of people. Yeah. These they're going to be really good. They're going to be really good. I agree, Jonathan. Okay. Let's take a look at our next matchup. Cox Mill hosting Lake Norman. Talking about conference rematches, man. Good gracious. They are in abundance in the first round here. So Cox Mill last week, they knocked off South Iredale. And, going into the playoffs on a good note. Playing some of their best football of the year. That comeback win over Hickory Ridge 2 weeks ago. 8-2 on the season. Obviously 5-1 in the conference. They defeated Lake Norman 45-7 earlier this year. Now, we know Lake Norman is playing really good football. They took Mooresville to the wire last week, or last Friday, I should say. You take a look at this matchup from October the 14th. So Lake Norman does have some stats in here, but they had a lot of different guys run the football. They ran for 249 yards, but obviously the problem was, when you play in Cox Mill, you can't give up, the big plays. They're really good at that. They have explosive athletes in the running game and on the outside. And if you're Lake Norman, that's going to be your key here. You can't give up the stuff over the top. You got to tackle well in space. You got to make them drive the field, which is very difficult when you got, the kind of players that Cox Mill has on the offensive side of football. The other part of that is while they did run for 249 yards, they didn't have anyone that was really, I would say, a standout person. Their highest guy ran for 54 yards. So they've got to get the run game going. They've got to, it's kind of like when we see Charlotte Catholic. It's kind of like when they played Providence Day earlier this year. That run game is going to have to dictate a slow tempo. They're going to have to get 4 and 5 yards, first downs, and they're going to have to play, a really, really conservative football game because you got to keep Cox Mill off the field. Their best defense is going to have to be their offense in this one. And then for Cox Mill, obviously load up against the run. What you did obviously worked very well, holding them to 7 points. Same game plan. See what they change, because obviously they're going to have to change some things up to get, a better offensive output. But I like Cox Mill. Like we said in these rematches, when it's that lopsided the first time around, you favor the team that won. Um, so if Cox Mill wins and they got the winner of Weddington Marvin Ridge, that's going to be a heck of a second round matchup there. Good gracious. All right. AC Reynolds, 7 seed, hosting AL Brown, 26 seed, out of the Greater Metro 4. Um, AL Brown is an interesting team. They are, they played Mooresville, obviously to a 1 point loss. And then in the Bell game, they defeated Concord, I think it was 18-7. So, um, AC Reynolds, we know, can run the football really well. So AL Brown's going to have to be able to come in and shut the run down first, second, and third. And then on the flip side of it, the young quarterback, Gray, for AL Brown is going to have to obviously play his best game here. They've got some playmakers, that can do some things with the ball in their hands. The tough thing with AC Reynolds, though, AC Reynolds is not your typical mountain team. They're probably the best team out of the mountains. And they came down. They've seen real speed. They played Shelby earlier this year. If you guys remember that, they beat Shelby pretty good. And, Shelby has a pretty strong offensive attack. So I don't think A.L. Brown's going to be any kind of shock to the system, for AC Reynolds. You got to favor AC Reynolds in that matchup when you look at it. I just think they have a really, really strong sophomore running back. I remember talking about him. He ran for like 300 yards against Shelby in that matchup. Let me see if I can get his name because I think he's one of the best sophomore running backs in the state. Let me see if they've got him featured here. Oh, yeah, Max Guest. That's him. 24 touchdowns on the year. He's averaging 153 rushing yards on the season. So that's going to be obviously the big key for A.L. Brown, shutting that down or trying to shut that down. AC Reynolds is 9-1 on the season. Their only loss was to Raven Gap in the private school ranks. 37-28. They're a really, really good football team. Everyone else they have beat pretty soundly, including Shelby, that 45-21 victory back in the second week of the season. So, yeah, you got to like AC Reynolds here. They're a really, really good football team, for sure. Okay, let's see. Chat administrator, if the A.L. Brown team that played us shows up, Gray's going to have to play his best game. He's going to have to play his best game for sure. Now, I'm not saying this is a walk in the park for AC Reynolds, but I do like them to win the game. I think they're battle tested. And they won't be surprised by the athleticism of A.L. Brown is what I'm saying here. All right, so the winner of that one will play the winner of Chambers and Porter Ridge. This is a playoff rematch from last year. Chambers beat Porter Ridge pretty good last year in the playoffs. The way that I saw Chambers play, I like Chambers in this one. Number one, I think they're playing really, really well. I liked some of the things they did on offense that were different. They moved KC into the backfield. He played some running back. He played some Wildcat quarterback. And then they moved Bubba, the quarterback, to kind of like a wing guy when they get Casey at quarterback. So there was some innovation on offense from Chambers, and those things worked out well. I feel like Zion Booker had a really strong game. Him complimenting KC in the receiving game, that's a tough 1-2 combination. And then defensively, between Jordan Thompson, Zarion Jackson Bass, and TJ McGill, in the secondary. At all three levels, Chambers has impact players that can get things done. Um, and that's going to be a tough ask for Porter Ridge to go into Chambers um, and knock them off. We know this time of year is when Chambers, kind of flips the switch. And it looks like that switch got flipped last week when they played Mallard Creek and won by 2 touchdowns on their field. Now, Porter Ridge has some guys you got to worry about, especially Stephen Zayakowski, who's had an amazing season on both sides of the football. I like Harrison Johnson at linebacker. Stitt at wide receiver is a good player. They got some guys that you got to, consider and worry about. Danny Kennedy running the football. But like I said, moving the ball consistently on Chambers is going to be a big challenge for Porter Ridge. So I like an AC Reynolds Chambers second round matchup. Good gracious. You talk about a heck of a football game. If that happens, that is going to be some hard hitting, hard nosed football up at AC Reynolds. Good gracious. Best matchup of the first round. The games I looked at real quickly. Butler, 15 seed, getting that second seed out of the Southwest because of the RPI three-way tie situation. Hosting Hickory Ridge. What a first-round matchup. Yes, that is a quarterfinal level playoff matchup right there. And when I saw this game, it's on my early list of games that I'm going to be at Friday night. Now, Butler lost to Independence 27-21. Hickory Ridge, has had a disappointing season to the standard that, when we all thought, coming in, they were going to be the favorite out of the Greater Metro 4. And then to finish, not in the top 2, they're going to be looking at this like it's redemption time. I guarantee you they are fired up there, and they're going to want to come out and say, this is the time for us to show everyone we are the team who we thought we were going to be all season long. Now, this is really, really tough here. This is a tough game to break down because, number one, you have so much talent on both sides of the football. And you have the Hickory Ridge offense, who is a strong point. You have the Butler defense, who is a strong point. And I think you're going to get a game just like we saw with Butler and Charlotte Catholic, and then Hickory Ridge and Charlotte Catholic. You're going to have an epic game here that's going to come down to the fourth quarter, and whoever makes the plays, is going to win the game. It's a 15-18 matchup. I couldn't predict the winner here. When you look at Butler offensively, can they make enough plays in the passing game? Is what I'm thinking. I feel like Hickory Ridge has a good defense, but Butler will be able to do some things against them in the run game. I feel like they have Butler has a good offensive line. I love the way DJ Horton runs the ball, number 3. Zach at quarterback will have the opportunity to make some plays down the field. They got hot in the middle of that game against Independence. They put up points very quickly. When they're clicking, they're tough to stop. You flip it on the other side, and Hickory Ridge on offense, we know about Jalen Harris. We know about Christian Hamilton. And then Haywood at quarterback. They're going to be able to make some plays down the field, throwing the football. Butler has a strong pass rush led by Peyton Scott. Him getting pressure on Haywood, throwing him out of the pocket, getting him off timing is going to be big. This is going to be a great football game. This is going to be an absolutely great football game that I could talk about for another 10 minutes just by itself if I wanted to. But I'm going to save some of that for Wednesday night because that's going to be obviously a game we talk about. But that is an awesome matchup. So then the winner of that will play the winner of Mooresville and Southwest Guilford. Mooresville getting the big win over their rival, Lake Norman. They won the Greater Metro 4 Conference. We know, obviously, about Mooresville, really, really well. Looked up some things on Southwest Guilford. Read some things about them. I think they're a team that, it's not necessarily played their best football consistently all year long. They have the potential to play well, but I don't think they're playing their best football right now. Now, the key here, Mooresville has got to come out and be locked in and ready to go. The good thing is we know they're going to have a really, really good crowd. It's going to be a good environment. And for them to be a 2 seed in the playoffs is not something anyone expected. I think if you ask Mooresville people, they would say, we didn't expect to be number 2 in the playoffs. But the big thing is, Southwest Guilford is going to come in here. When you're a 31 seed, I've been a low seed in the playoffs before. When you come in as a low seed and you feel like, you're not expected to do anything, you've got to be really, really careful if you're Mooresville because you're going to get everything thrown at you. From a trick play perspective, from, things that are not expected, surprise onside kicks. They're going to throw caution to the wind to try and upset you. So that's things that you talk about typically on a either a Monday or a Thursday, depending on your practice schedule. Just talking to your guys about, okay, just be smart. You think about all the things with trick plays, playing to your tendency, doing what you coach to do, all those kind of things here. So Mooresville, I think if they come out early and they get a two or three touchdown lead, I don't think Southwest Guilford has it in them to come back. They don't have that kind of offense. But if they let Southwest Guilford hang around and get some confidence, then, the pressure and the environment will flip on you in those situations because your crowd's coming in and expecting a big win here, just looking at the seeding. But best of luck to Mooresville. And if they win, they got the winner of Butler Hickory Ridge. Hickory Ridge obviously would be a rematch, from the conference, and then Butler would be a heck of a game either way. So there you go. All right. Let's take a look real quick. We're going to go to the 3A West, and we'll just talk about a couple teams real quick. Kings Mountain, St. Stephen's. I like Kings Mountain in that game. No offense to St. Stephen's, but I don't think they've got enough to pull an upset there. And they'll play the winner of Central Davidson, Smoky Mountain. And we got a first-round rematch from last year. These teams played each other in the first round, West Charlotte and Stuart Kramer. I was at that game. Now, the unfortunate thing last year, Justin Rockamore, the Stuart Kramer quarterback, was not healthy. He tried to play on a sprained ankle. He couldn't play, and then Kramer lost. So, little bit of redemption here for Stuart Kramer to get this matchup, but West Charlotte's probably liking that draw right there. Excuse me. And then they'll play the winner of High Brighton and Southern Guilford. And High Brighton is not the same High Brighton that we know and love. I'm going to tell you about High Brighton. So, and I'm going to do this real quick. So High Brighton this year is a 5-5 team. They went 4-1 in the conference, which is why they got the seed that they got. But High Brighton lost to Hunter Huss, who is not in the playoffs. They lost big to Shelby. So that Southern Guilford matchup This is a game that Southern Guilford probably feels like they have a good shot in. Southern Guilford went 6-4 on the year. Um, you look at their schedule now; they're not they're not that great when you look at them overall. But I mean, it's a game that both teams probably feel like they have a chance to win. Now you look at it and you say, okay, if West Charlotte gets past Kramer, you gotta like them in that High Brighton Southern Guilford winner too. So there's a path for West Charlotte to get to the third round, and then they would play. Looks like they would play Kings Mountain. That's a playoff rematch. Kings Mountain knocked off West Charlotte last year in the second round. So interesting pathways here. On how we've got a lot of kind of playoff rematches from last year kind of shaking out here. But that's a good draw for West Charlotte. That is a good draw for them. Have to really watch them here. All right, Northwest Cabarrus and Ashbrook. That's an interesting first round matchup. Northwest Cabarrus won the South Piedmont Conference, which is why they got a 5 seed. Ashbrook getting in at 28. They basically got in because they beat Hunter Huss in their bell game last week. It's an interesting matchup because Ashbrook can do one thing really well. They can run the football. And we've seen Northwest Cabarrus have some trouble against Concord, who is a heavy run team. They won that game, but it was close. That is a game that you're going to have to watch here because Ashbrook can run the football and they have the ability to play good defense. So that's a game, a 5-28, that's going to be closer than you think, possibly. So Ledford and Freedom would be the winner of that one. Tuscola and Forest View. Forest View getting in as a 20, playing Tuscola. Let's take a quick look at Tuscola. Forest View has a good defense. They're kind of a run first team on the offensive side of football. Tuscola went 9-1 this year. 5-1, second in the conference. Their only loss was to West Henderson, but it was a big one. They lost 55-7. So they're not coming off a good situation. Interesting to see how they respond to a loss because they haven't had one. Now they won 2 close games. Pisgah they won by 1. Smoky Mountain they won by 1. So 9-1 is their record, but Forest View, if they come to play, they got a shot. They got a shot in that one. All right, on down the bracket. The winner of them would play the winner of East Lincoln and Ashe County. East Lincoln's really strong football team. I like them to move on. They got a shot to make a run there too out of that bracket quadrant. Yeah, I like East Lincoln there. All right, West Meck in the playoffs. Congrats to the Hawks. They get to play Oak Grove. Oak Grove is in the Winston-Salem area. Let's take a look at Oak Grove and see what West Meck has got on their hands here. All right. Oak Grove Grizzlies. They hadn't been around that long. A newer school. They went 10-0. 5-0 in the conference this year. A lot of close games. 1 by 3 to Southwest Guilford. They won by 9 over West Forsyth. Won by 1 over Ragsdale. So they know how to win close football games. They just defeated Central Davidson 16-14. Now, West Meck is a team. It's not going to be easy for Oak Grove. West Meck is a team. They're a scrappy team. They have some good guys, especially on the defensive side of football. Of course, we talked about B.D. Waddell V, the linebacker all year long. Amari Sanders Richardson at corner. They got, the ability to play good defense. Can they find enough offense to make this interesting is the big thing for West Meck. Their quarterback, Walkup's going to have to play a really, really good game on that side of football to make it interesting here. But I'm glad West Meck got in the playoffs. That's a big step for that program. under Coach Waddell's leadership. Um, Now, I wish him the best for sure here. Now, the good thing is um, they've had a bye the last week of the season, so they're rested. So if they were kind of beat up a little bit, it's rare to have a last week bye, but that's the way their schedule worked out. So they're coming into this, rested and ready to go. So best of luck to the Hawks and safe travels, in that matchup. Creston Statesville in a good first round matchup. We're going to talk about that on the Wednesday show. Dudley hosting Pisgah. South Point Hickory's a heck of a first round game. Good gracious. Hickory has some good athletes, man. Quarterback Brady Stober. We know they got Rico Walker, big time recruit. They can really throw the football. Deshaun Medley was a receiver for Hickory that had a really good game that we featured on Pep Man's Players. South Point with the Red Bell offense, but that's a good first round. I think that's gonna be a big crowd at that South Point Hickory game. I like that matchup there. And then on down the line, Irwin and Carson. I think Carson might have a shot in that one. Irwin is not the best team out of Asheville. They're a good team, but not the best team from that. We talked about AC Reynolds. I think they're the best team out of Asheville. Parkwood getting in as a 10 seed. Eastern Guilford. Parkwood, good season. Hopefully they're able to capitalize on that Eastern Guilford matchup. West Moran Franklin is a good first round matchup. And then West Henderson and North Davidson getting to match up against each other. So 3A West is very interesting. You go over to 2A West. Of course, Reedsville is one of the big favorites there. Chase, we know their running back McCombs. I think he's done for the season. That's a big loss for them. I think they got enough to get past North Wilkes. And then a potential second round matchup against Jam Robinson and Chase. Heck of a football game right there. Mount Pleasant going up to Walkertown. Did some research on Walkertown. They are athletic. They got speed. They play aggressive on defense. Of course, those kind of things Mount Pleasant have seen all season long, throughout their schedules. So I don't think it'll be a shock to the system. Mount Pleasant has a good shot to move on and play, looks like Maiden in the next round. Community School Davidson, and that, strong passing game with those guys. They're hosting East Gaston in the first round. I think the matchups favor Community School Davidson from the offensive versus the defensive standpoint. East Gaston is a team that I think can stop the run pretty well, but they're going to have some trouble against the pass. I like Davidson to move on there and play the winner of Bunker Hill, East Davidson. Burns and Eden Moorhead. I like Burns there to move on past Moorhead and play the winner of a great first round matchup between Forest Hills and Shelby. Good gracious. That is a big time first round matchup. We know Shelby didn't have some guys when they played last week against Burns. We'll see if they're able to get those guys back in the fold. If they are, that's going to be a really, really great football game. God almighty, what a game. But we have the potential for a Burns-Shelby rematch in the second round. Good gracious. Wow, what a draw. What a draw there. We'll talk more about that matchup on Wednesday. Salisbury, very strong team. They haven't lost since their first game of the season. I like them to move past Brevard and then play the winner of Pine Lake and West Stokes. Pine Lake losing that big game to Community School Davidson 28-10. They do get a home game, which is great. I like their chances against West Stokes, and then that second round matchup with Salisbury will be very interesting. Very interesting right there. Monroe and North Stanley. I like Monroe to move past North Stanley, play the winner of Randleman and Lincolnton. Lincolnton has a shot. They got a shot in that one. And I'm gonna tell you why, because I feel like Lincolnton has played a good schedule. And I don't think Randleman has played the schedule Lincolnton has. And when you get into these matchups, it's important to look at kind of who's played who and who kind of has a record that looks impressive on paper, but have they been tested, you know? So Randleman's lost to Central Davidson, they lost to North Stanley, and they lost to Eastern Randolph, okay? And then you look at Lincolnton, I feel like Lincolnton has played a tougher schedule. I'm just going to pull them up real quick. So Lincolnton is now they're 5-5 on the year, but they lost to South Point, they lost to East Lincoln, they lost by 1 to Bunker Hill, who's a high seed. They lost to Maiden, who's a high seed, and they just lost by 1 in double overtime to West Lincoln, who's 8-2. Battle tested. That's why I feel like Lincoln has a shot in this first round matchup against Randleman. So that's going to be one to watch right there. That's the only time I got to do it, man. It's the only time I got to do it. I appreciate it. Yeah, I did 4A already. I'm almost done, and then you'll see the replay, Mark Hill. You'll see what I said about 4A. Let's see here. We'll finish up the 2A bracket. West Lincoln, we just talked about them in Hendersonville. They got the Mason Avery at running back. It's got to be, if they did a high school Heisman, that guy, he is the West Lincoln team, man. He runs for hundreds of yards every game, makes a bunch of tackles on defense. He's a heck of a player. And then East Surrey and Anson, you got to like East Surrey there. East Surrey is a definite title candidate. Seems like year in and year out. They're a really, really good program up there. All right, 1A real quick, where everyone gets in the playoffs, but there's still a couple of good matchups. Eastern Randolph with a bye will play the winner of South Stokes Mountain Heritage. Robbinsville and Cherryville, Star Mountain Cherokee. Christ the King having a great season. Like them to move past Avery County to play the winner of Hayesville and Allegheny. North Oran, a really good program in 1A. Like them to move past Carver. Play the winner of Mount Airy and North Stokes. North Oran, Mount Airy would be a heck of a second round game. Thomasville Elkin, like Thomasville to move on there. Swing County, Winston-Salem Prep, like Swain County to move on there. Drawn with our boy Elijah Tillery at quarterback. I like them to move past Union Academy. They'll play the winner of Mitchell, South Davidson. Murphy's always tough, hosting Albemarle. I like them to move on, play the winner of East Wilkes, Thomas Jefferson, which would probably be East Wilkes. Thomas Jefferson's had kind of a tough year, kind of bouncing back from losing a lot of seniors last year. Really interesting game right here with Mountain Island Charter hosting Bessemer City. That'll be a pretty good game right there. Winner of that game will probably play Andrews, who's playing Highland Tech in the first round. So, all right. Well, that's the CFI playoff bracket special. It went a lot longer than I thought it was. I'm going to end here in just a second, and then on the replay, you'll be able to see all the 4A stuff I talked about earlier. But make sure, tune in Wednesday night. We'll have special matchups we break down on Football Focus Weekly. And we'll do predictions and all the good stuff you come to love. So thanks for watching, guys. Appreciate it. Make sure you watch the playback for all the 4A stuff. And we'll see you guys on Wednesday night. Thanks a lot.